Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Platform This and That. My name is Rory Neary, and I'm your host today, and I'm joined here today by Sean Astrakhan.
Hello.
So, Sean, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to getting to chat to you today. Now, Sean, I think one of the things I like to do on this podcast is sort of reminisce and then think about when did I first meet Sean. Now, we haven't met in person, but maybe I'm thinking maybe like about a year and a half ago I started to see your videos, something like that. And there was a time in Power Platform before Sean, BS. That shows the level of this
You're
podcast.
so more pompous, self-righteous, better than everyone say. Well, there was a time in Power Player before you, right?
Yeah, but you know what I mean. There was a time when you weren't in the Power Platform, and then there's a time then you kind of were, and then I've seen lots of you. So and that was probably about 18 months ago. And then since then, I've seen you lots of things, and strange enough, you also know a lot of the same people I seem to know. So you're good friends with Franco as well, which is cool. And Franco's a good friend of mine. And yeah, so Power Platform. So maybe let me start with how did you get into Power Platform? This is your.
Can I also answer when I first heard of you?
Oh, cool. Yes, go for it.
Yeah. A video appears in my LinkedIn feed, and it's some guy who's like self-filming and says, "Hey, so this is a song I'm about to make up to Sarah Jones." You're saying la 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 la, and like your voice was actually terrific, and you made up a song, and I thought this dude volunteers himself for karaoke. That's who this guy is. Like he has the confidence, he has the voice. Like I want to connect with this guy, and then we did.
Oh, fantastic! And that was with Sarah. Yeah. Said that was with Sarah Jones. I wrote. Oh, it was a good little song that I'm gonna have to ask. I rewrote the lyrics to a song, but for her. That was fun. That was. Cool. Well, that's nice to know because that was about 12 months ago ish, something like that. Probably less
Yeah,
than that
that
actually.
was one of those moments where I saw you put yourself out there and you weren't just talking tech. You're like, this is who I am. I sing. I also draw. If you don't like it, you don't have to talk to me. That's not your attitude, but I'm like self-conscious with being too personal on LinkedIn, so people like you inspire me.
Cool. That's yeah. It's always nice to know about how you have a personal impact on people. So that's quite a nice route in. And I also listened to you it was probably about 6 months ago on the Sprint Zero podcast with the guys there, and yeah, you gave a bit of your backstory. So I'd love if our listeners could hear a little bit about that.
The day I got into technology, I was in my late 20s in China working, teaching writing, and one of my co-professors said, I live in China because I used to be in senior management at a Fortune 500 company. They were bought out and all senior management was laid off. And what I learned that day was if you don't have concrete, usable skills, not humanities, liberal arts degrees, no offense to those, even though I have them. If you don't have like tangible, applicable skills, you will end up in China in your 60s. And so I decided from then on, I need to learn something besides like being likable. And I started to learn to code.
So, okay, let me dig into that then. So, at that point, you then started to do what? You started to upskill yourself somehow.
Yeah, I started to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I figured, let me get my foot in the door with design. The equivalent today would be learning something like Canvas apps. The bar to entry is very, very low. It's also very fun. The next phase was convince a company to hire me, given the fact that I have no skills. And companies want you to have skills before they hire you, but you don't have any company experience to gain those skills, and you're in a catch-22 of being unhireable. So I had to learn to persuade businesses that although I don't have technical skills yet, I can be of value to you in these other ways. And I said the magic phrase that will get anyone a job anywhere, which is I will work for free. And I did that for 2 months. I was an intern, and then they trusted me, and then they gave me a great salary, and then it was smooth sailing from then on.
Yeah, and I guess from the point of view of, I guess the target audience for this podcast are people that are new to Power Platform and also essentially friends. It's supposed to be, you know, a fun podcast. And so for people wanting to get into Power Platform or arguably any industry, there's that. It is a tough one, isn't it? That my I guess if I was to answer the same question, it would go something on the lines of go get yourself a Microsoft 365 tenant and then start building things. But my journey was different to other people because of when it all started. So mine started when, you know, I was the only person in the area with Power BI on my CV. So it was different. I put Power Apps on my CV at a time when it was Power Apps, all one word. So at that time, you know, when you're one of very few people with a skill, then obviously it's a little bit easier to get in the door. But at the same time, it was, call it pioneering in the sense of I just thought it looked good. I thought this is really good, and I was just building things. And maybe that's the trick from my point of view. I think that your journey is interesting. My journey was different at a different time, but mine also involved just building things for myself that I thought were good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I would add build your portfolio and be prepared to share it with everyone. As in, if you get that job interview, you better be screen sharing, showing off what you have built, showing that you truly understand it. I would even say if you want to stand out, when you apply to recruiters, when you apply to jobs, they're all sending the same generic message of like, hey, I know Power Apps, like, are you hiring? Da da da. Also include a screenshot of some of the stuff you built. No one is doing that. You will automatically stand out. So I think a lot of getting your first job is like make yourself more noticeable.
Yeah. And, you know, in many respects, when I'm putting this podcast together, I do have it in my mind that hopefully a good chunk of the listeners may have done the Power Up program, the Microsoft Power Up program. And, you know, when I created the content for that. The first time around we created the content, they were building apps using the classic controls. But I don't know about you, but those classic controls are now starting to look really, really old. They're starting to look almost to the point of kind of feeling a little bit ancient. And if you ever see someone talking about Power Platform and you see those controls, you then think, that's really old. I know they behave differently to other controls, but they do also stand out probably for the wrong reasons. I think I know that blue color. You know, the blue color for the drop down in a classic
Like all
control.
my apps. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I when I try and build the apps now, I'm trying to use modern controls and I'm trying to use containers and those sorts of things because it does make a difference.
Yeah. And the downside of all of that is it's an extra thing you're trying to maintain. Like if you're importing the creator kit, you now have this other layer of abstraction on your code that you have to jump through that somebody else has to maintain. And then also it does not have, I'm going to use the word feature parity, but what that means is it may not honor all the other features that come with Canvas apps, like the simple one just being, I don't know if for unit testing, if that is even compliant yet. When I used it a year ago, it wasn't. So like you will be surprised trying to do something that just works great with the standard controls. They don't work with any of the new ones you imported. And do you really want to deal with those surprises just for a prettier UI? In some cases, you absolutely should. It's worth it. The client loves it. It looks nice. It can give you sometimes more robust tools, but it is an internal app at the end of the day. And like, what are you going for here? Are you trying to sell the thing, or are you trying to get the business to accomplish its goals? It could be both.
Yeah. I mean, they do have some slightly odd features in some ways. I know I was talking to Ulrika about the text input control, and when you enter text into it, the app doesn't understand that you've entered text in, so you end up having to put a kind of almost a dummy button outside it, so you kind of shift focus and so on. But I mean, those things can be got around. So you started to get into coding, and the coding that you were talking about was not necessarily Power Platform coding. It was just call it general code, and some of the things that you've mentioned earlier on in terms of HTML and JavaScript and so on, they do apply to Power Platform, but you don't have to know them in order to be able, in particular Canvas apps, you don't need to know those things for that. But maybe as you get into model-driven apps, some of those things will become more relevant. So you got into writing that, and then you did a 2-month period where you worked for free, and then you were employed, I guess.
Yeah, and then they gave me a full-time job. I did a lot of net. We did Angular, a lot of pro code stuff, and then Dynamics projects came in. And when you do know pro code, you are really a rock star in a low code. My friend Frank says that. Like, for instance, the example you just gave, like, absolutely, you technically do not need to know JavaScript at all for Canvas apps. But when you do know JavaScript, you know, like, the concept of memory leaks. And that applies to Canvas apps. Like, there's a reason that the limit is like 5,000 rows. Like, and people get around that. They're like, oh, I'm just going to keep putting it in a collection. If they don't have that JavaScript or pro code background, they don't realize how the browser can handle that.
Oh, okay.
And that's where you get that advantage when you have done pro code. People like Parvez, you should bring him on your show. Like, he's so good at AOM because he comes from that pro code world. I found that to be a huge advantage. And then it also, once you get those pro code concepts, even if you stay in low code the rest of your life, like, they don't really go away. That's what I kind of love about pro code, is it's a best practice that lingers forever in everything. Like, the way you would build it right in pro code applies to any technology versus low code. Some of that happens, but sometimes you're just kind of memorizing how the tool does its certain thing. You're not really learning a concept, you're learning the tool, and the tool can become deprecated and go away.
Yeah. And so how do you get from where you were there into Power Platform?
Yeah. Power Platform and I have like a long relationship. We're like high school sweethearts who tried to break up, and then we ended up like back together again in the future. So after I learned .NET, I did a lot of Dynamics 365 like integrations, so a lot of stuff with plugins. This was like over 10 years ago. And then I just thought it was for children. And I left, and I wanted to do like Python and really in-depth like AWS. I wanted to I even started learning Kafka, which is absolutely insane. I don't know what I was thinking. And I worked at the Washington Post working with like all this throughput of information, like 80,000 like articles streaming through in seconds, like processing at that level. And what I learned from that is when you get really deep, really technical, your coworkers are boring. And I didn't want that anymore. I was like, they're too far in the back end. It was like talking to a bunch of whatever your stereotype is of engineers. That's who it was. And it wasn't for me. They were having a great time, but I was like, I'm not hanging out here. Does anyone like, being socially comfortable to talk to? No? Okay, let me go somewhere else. And so I ended up back in Power Platform. And what I adore about the community and the tool is everyone is so client facing. You have to be. I don't know anyone who is not client facing and just coding away in Power Platform. I'm like, if you're doing that, you're like really missing out here. And so I've come back to the community because of how really great and easy to get along with and social and vivacious the community itself is, because I think we're good with people because we have to be.
Yeah. And I know that, trying to think, you're going to an event, and I'm not going to get to go to it, but it would have been our first time we'd been able to meet each other. Would that have been Dynamic Minds?
Yeah, so you're not going?
No, I'm not going to that, sadly.
Oh.
That's kind of dating this, isn't it? But you know, but like Power Platform and like how you came back to it, and we will meet.
Are you at South Summit? This is probably a boring part of the podcast, 100%. Is us sharing calendars, but
No, it's because everyone's going to come down to South Coast because we're going to be there.
Okay, got it. Well, I'll be at South Summit, is what I was saying.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So okay, you came back into love. Do you know what though? There was one bit of the many bits of the podcast you did with Sprint Zero guys, but one of the bits was about the restaurant. And I really, really like that. Are you able to relive the restaurant experience?
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that. I told that to John and Mike, and they just breezed past because they wanted me to get to the technical stuff. And I'm like, how are you not curious how I got fired twice from a Mexican restaurant? So, Rory, is that what you're curious about?
Yes, I am. So, but I know the story, but I think our listeners would enjoy it.
So I was very young. I was a late teen, and I got hired at this Mexican restaurant. It's a chain. And I wanted to learn Spanish and practice it. And they put me at the front where I serve customers because I'm a native English speaker. And I told them, this is ridiculous. Everyone who works in the kitchen, they want to learn English. I want to learn Spanish. Let's switch us. And so the manager thought that would cause the customers to be uncomfortable with someone who speaks English as a second language. And I said that is a giant insulting generalization about our customers. And they didn't like to hear that, especially out of like a 17-year-old who, what does he know about anything?
I think you should go back there. I think you should go back to that restaurant now.
I think it's actually, I want to say it's doing it's doing super well. It's like the most popular restaurant chain in the USA. I'm going to keep it anonymous, but it rhymes with Chipotle. So I was working there, and anyways, the manager was tired of that and then let me go. But they opened a second Chipotle because it was just in the area, and then I applied there, and they said, oh, have you worked at a Chipotle before? I was like, yes, I have. But it closed down, the one I used to work at. And they're like, okay, did you work at facing the customers or did you work in the kitchen? I was like, I worked in the kitchen. And so then they put me in the back, and then just my first day, it was just a complete disaster. I was like, I don't even know how to turn on the oven. They're like, I thought you said you worked in the kitchen. I was like, we use a different oven. We were on metric system. So yeah, I'm just going to need a few minutes here.
And did you get fired from that one as well?
Yeah, but the reasons were slightly similar, slightly different. At that point, my Spanish was pretty good and it was fine, but I thought they weren't, I don't want to go into the details of it, but I didn't feel like they were treating some of the people there who were undocumented well and fairly. And so I wasn't creating a lot of waves with it, but I was bringing it to their attention. And then they got rid of me too, which now that I think about it, I think might be completely illegal. But at this point, I was like 18. I barely knew my rights.
Yeah. But it struck me that, like, when you have those young working experiences, you learn an awful lot from them. Like, in some ways, I can remember some of my really early working experiences much more than, 15 or so years I worked, 20 odd years I worked as an accountant. There days and months went past, and I could probably not tell you a single story from them, really. I worked as a silver service waiter, and that's where you kind of balance the plates and so on. But yeah, I think these early experiences are really important. And so even if you think about our listeners, then just because you haven't always worked in code doesn't mean that your experiences aren't valid. They are valid. but you just have to look at them with a slightly different lens in order to think about what was that job, what did I learn there, and so on. Well, fantastic. And so you're now in the Power Platform, and you do these videos that just put the rest of us to shame. And where, let me just describe, I'm going to pretend to describe a video. All I know is just a few points, but it just generally goes along the lines of the camera's looking at Sean, but the camera pans out. And the pans out and pans out and pans out, and then kind of eventually is looking at the entire universe. And then you say something profound, but I can't quite remember the profound thing that you say. But the production qualities, it's definitely not Star Wars, but it doesn't need to be. It's better for not being kind of Star Wars, if you see what I mean. But it's your creative content and mind that has kind of thought, well, I could do it like this. And, I suspect that in a few months' time, people will be doing AI versions of the same thing. But there is something that just makes you sad when you see an AI video of a thing.
Yeah. So the quote at the end of that video was, "What are you going to do with your one wild and precious life?" And the beginning of the video is me explaining database schemas behind the scenes.
Yeah. And that is, and I guess... certainly from the point of view of the podcast, I wanted to get connected with people in a way that was a step beyond just putting a like onto LinkedIn or a little comment next to something. And, I invite listeners to be involved in the community and also to go to events, find out those events that are local to them. There will be something, but it may not be as frequent as you'd like. But I think in particular, Power Platform is a very interesting community just because it's relatively young and it's changing so fast that everyone knows they can't be an expert in it. So there's always that level of, I'm going to call it imposter syndrome, but certainly a sense that, you might be great at, I don't know, database design, but maybe you're not that good at creating a user interface. But I believe there's a place for many people in this platform, and so you can find your home, and there are so many people in it. There's recruiters, there's all sorts of people, there are program managers, there's project managers, there's all sorts of people that can be in Power Platform that aren't necessarily doing the outright building.
With all of that, I see it as, one, how do you stand out and how do you get attention, which is the reason I make my videos the way I do, is partly, I feel like Tarantino, I'm making those videos for me. I think they're funny. Like, they entertain myself, they entertain my friends, they entertain my partner. Like, it's there. And the fact that it reaches an even bigger audience is like icing on the cake. But it goes back to what I said at the beginning of sending screenshots to a recruiter. Is like, I'm doing what I need to do to stand out. I think my content and what I'm teaching is top notch, so I want it to go to as many people as possible. And by the way, almost all of my content is not just me. There's usually somebody collaborating or helping me with it, or I'm working with someone on it. And the other side of it is, I get this question a lot of, yeah, there's all this technology, like, how do you keep up? Like, is it possible? And it's like, no. And so the strategy I use to keep up is I focus not on what's coming out this year. I don't really care that much unless it's absolutely like GA and has already been vetted by the community. I'm like a year behind on everything because I've noticed it comes in waves. People get excited, it gets released, it's actually super clunky and unreliable, and then it takes like a year or two to like get anywhere, and sometimes it never gets there. And so in those cases, I don't think that's the best use of my time. What I'm always looking at is which of these features are going to actually bring value to businesses. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, cool. Dynamics offers security on certain views. Like, that's pretty cool, and that's a simple feature. Like, okay, I'll keep that in the back of my mind. That doesn't blow me away as something I need to hold on to. That's something I would Google in the future if I need that. So I just always have my pulse on, like, where is it going that is going to be of value to businesses, not what's just the new feature and what's kind of cool.
Yeah, and certainly as a case in point, I remember when they did this thing in Power BI at one point, and it was called content packs, and I never quite understood it. I never it just never quite, and it was new and it came out and you were supposed to understand it and all this sort of thing. And it never quite, it was just slightly strange. But actually, and then a number of years later you find out that it's been deprecated.
Yeah.
And it is what happens, and I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's just the world we live in, is that if we want this pace of change to be possible, then there will be an element of bringing things out that kind of aren't quite ready, and using the community, if you like, as beta testers and so on, and for there actually to be things that just don't end up landing very well at all and going away. Funny enough, let's be controversial here. Mate, this might be the thing you dislike about Power Platform. I might be stealing your thunder here. But one of the licensing options for Power Apps is the per app licensing.
Yep.
Which is your halfway house between having a full-blown user license and no license at all. But it has occupied quite a strange position within the platform, partly because the ability to govern it has always been quite tricky. And yet more recently I have had people, it's been around for quite a while, it still gets recommended, but it's just not right out there. And have you seen examples of people using this or getting good value out of it?
Left and right. I would say in my program, I'd say about 10-15% of the people ask questions about it and want to use it. They usually upgrade from there to... So this is the evolution I see with companies, is they want to use Power Platform. They have some CTO that's gung-ho about it and wants to get it for all his users. Let's say he has hundreds. That gets super expensive to get them all on premium licensing. You also haven't established, are they going to actually use this app as much as you think? So typically what we go through is we hop through and we usually do the pay-as-you-go. That one's nice. It's more expensive than all of them, but you can measure the spikes of activity. And so it might turn out that only like 10% of your users are using it. So it's like a great way when you're in the unknown of it to like start on that. And then once you've established who are the people that are actually using the apps, like, do they just need that one Canvas app? Do they just need this one model-driven app? Or do they need the suite? And then from there, you kind of triage. I think a lot of companies that are rich, this isn't a question. It's just you give premium to everyone. You give it per user. But once you get into the hundreds, the thousands of users, like, no. Like, James Connolly's a great example. He's managing 40,000 users. Like, to give all of them per user licenses, like, would be an astronomical bill. And so that's where I think that app, although it's a little trickier to maintain and track, like, it's a terrific cost savings approach. And that's why I think they're never getting rid of it, even if they don't advertise it.
Yeah. I seem to recall that it was always a little bit tricky to know who had the license and how to then for them not to have it and give it to somebody else and so on. I don't know the extent to which that has changed. So what I'm thinking of doing now then is I'm going to move into the slightly more structured part of the podcast, and that's the something old, something new. So we go through the something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and then I also give you a chance to big up something that you have done or are doing that you want to just tell people about, and then we'll do your desert island disc, and then we'll head off into the sunset.
Beautiful.
So let's start with, and I'm with you on this in terms of the reason why I wanted to do something old was because there's a lot of cool stuff in Power Platform that's old, loads of it, most of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to hear what you've come up with.
The Excel import, I'm going with that. And Dynamics 365, Dataverse, it's been there. It's reliable. It works on like thousands of records. It does lookups. What else do you want? Like, it's been doing its job for 10 years. It's such a more reliable than like data flows, more You can't say there isn't as much data massaging options, but like it works exactly how you think it works the first time.
Yeah, sure. And just to be clear and slightly geeky, are we talking about a CS port?
Yes.
It is, but I think it kind of falls under the import from Excel, and you go, oh,
Yeah,
great,
exactly.
I'll get Excel, and you go, oh, it's CSV. Okay, fine, it's a CSV, great. Yeah, sure. And the other alternative to that is when you do the open in Excel online and you bring it in that way. Slightly different experience, less of a, not really a user interface, it's just more like actually just being in Excel, but can be quite effective as a way of working with things.
I was going to say the whole Excel suite in there, I feel like blows Canvas apps away, and it's been there for over like 10 years. Like, besides getting export to Excel, and then it's like, do you want the static worksheet, or like, do you want just the rows here, or do you want all of them? Those options are amazing. You got Excel templates. You can also do very fancy things where bar charts and graphs are very limited in the dashboard and dynamics, but it's like, oh, forget all that. We're going to move to like Power BI. Now you need Power BI licensing. Or if you don't want Power BI licensing, you could do graphing and charts and Canvas apps. Congratulations, they can't do any aggregations. They're very limited. However, what you can do in Excel is it already has graphs and charts or whatever you want. You can use that as your template and then have it export to that. And not only do you have Excel, do you have your table there, you now also have your graphs and charts. It's just like a workaround like few people know about. And it's just like that suite of Excel tools is so robust.
Cool.
Besides just
and
report.
I'll ask one more question on this then. Does it have a limit in terms of number of rows?
I haven't found it. I've done over 5,000 and I felt good about it. It did its job.
Yeah. Cool. So that's something old. I wasn't expecting that, but I don't think I'm ever going to expect anything that somebody comes up with on something old. So something new.
I am excited to see where Copilot Studio is going with just being able to type and have it generate the code and auto-connect everything. I've been keeping an eye on Damian Bird and Nathan Rose's content. Nathan Rose is actually doing stuff for our program on it, and it's very exciting. I saw him literally type in, when we get an email about this, put this into SharePoint, put this into Dataverse, create a lead. He typed that all out. I wish from there that was enough. He did have to create the actions separately, but then the flow of it and what it auto-populated with was pretty neat. I'm too deterministic with it, so I don't like that yet. But I think once you don't have to create the actions anymore and they're auto-created, which I don't think will be hard for them, and then once they make a really nice approval screen, I think that's going to really be a cool tool. I'm not spending too much time with it. It's on the periphery for me. I check in on it here and there, but I don't think this year or next year, but I think in maybe like 3 years, it could be really stable and really change how we approach things. I think it'll be what Power Automate tried to be when you had the Copilot editor and would throw in a few actions, but not well. I think this could get even better at it.
Sure. Yeah. And for the benefit of our listeners, what you're actually talking about is it is a different product. So there was a time when as part of Power Platform, we had Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Pages, and we also had Power Virtual Agents. They got a rename to Copilot, and then Copilot Studio. And then because Copilot Studio has effectively become so big and I guess reaches into so many different areas, it is its own thing. But even so, can you make the link between Copilot Studio and Dataverse for our listeners?
Yeah, so Copilot Studio is a whole separate tool, whole separate license model, which allows you to build chatbots, for lack of better words, and automations driven by AI, where you just kind of type out your prompts and it'll more or less build it for you. And then Dataverse is a connector you can have with it, similarly to how you'd have a connector in Power Automate. And that's it. It can talk to Dataverse.
Sure. Cool. So something old, something new, something borrowed. So the idea with this is for you to be able to big up somebody else's content and say, hey, this is great, I like what they're doing, and then we will put a link in the show notes to something that somebody in the community has been doing.
Trevor Mills, you might not have heard of him. He doesn't do that much content, but he is a beast, and him and I are releasing a video on a problem I have not seen solved well, and he knocked it out of the park. He built a translations reusable component that you or anyone can use if you need bilingual apps. It doesn't just translate your labels, it translates your option sets. It could even translate lookups. And if you're sitting there like, oh, that's kind of cool, I don't know how cool that, like, good luck using the out of the box tools. Good luck finding any tutorial. It only does the labels and kind of. And the richest part is the syntax to use this is like T underscore parentheses and then you're good. If you see any other tutorial on the topic, this syntax is huge. You're managing variables. It's a nightmare. What he did is really, really elegant. Well, we're really excited to release it this week.
And okay, so by the time it is released, we will be able to put that into the show notes as well. So that's going to come out as a video, correct?
It's a video linking to a GitHub repo. He's just giving it to you for free.
Cool. And in what context does this exist? Does this exist in the context of a model-driven app? I assume it probably does.
No, it's a Canvas app. Okay. Connected to SharePoint, so this is like everybody can use this. You can replace the data source with Dataverse if you want to. Right now, it's starting with SharePoint, and it specifically has features where it can use, like, SharePoint lists can talk to each other and use lookups. And the fact that he solved that translations problem is impressive. Like, you would expect your translation app to, like, change the labels from French to English. But then the data itself, you're going to have to, like, translate that too. But to make it in a way that it's not a mess and each table can take care of its own translations, or you have a mega translations table, whichever one you want, he solved for both.
And I guess anything that makes it possible for more people to use your app in more countries, it's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And especially for Canada, where they're bilingual. Pretty much every country except the USA and the UK. You guys are just as bad at you're just as ignorant as us. They're going to love it.
There's a real downside to being English from that respect, because you would just end up being a little bit culturally ignorant, I guess. Yeah, but I speak French, so I can I can hold my own in a conversation and so on. Okay, something old, something new, something borrowed. Okay, possibly this is my favourite bit. This is your opportunity to lose your MVP status. So so this is your, like, why is it like this? Why can't this simple thing, this button, just be nicer, or whatever it is? So I give you the floor to your something blue.
Has everyone complained about AI yet? Is that topic like too recycled on this podcast?
It is a bit, in the sense, myself and Ulrika had a chat about it, and that kind of sense of disappointment of, the sigh, if you like, of and maybe not being able to look at any image ever and quite know whether it's real.
I'm taking a different direction. My longing is that there wouldn't be as much AI assistance sprinkled into the apps when there are some other features that would be so much more critical and helpful. Like, for instance, in data flows, those are so awesome and so user-friendly, and like we love them, but they're not environment aware, so they're not truly ALM friendly, and then they're just missing some like key obvious columns that you can't map to. Like, you can't map to the status column. It really gets messed up if you're using like the user versus teams field, like the owner. It can't do some of those really basic things. And I wish those features would get prioritized because those would benefit everyone. But instead, I see features coming out like it automatically figures out based on your source and your target, and it'll like kind of auto map for you. I'm like, I didn't really need that, and that doesn't help me that much. And then even like a few months ago, logging into model-driven apps, and it's like, hey, search with Copilot instead of the filters. I'm like, you made an amazing filter system. Like, I love it. I can with you're letting me drag and drop fetch XML right there. It works great. I don't need this extra thing, and my users aren't confused. So, like, why is there a less powerful AI thing right now?
And I kind of agree with you on that point on, we're talking about, filtering in the context of a model-driven app and looking at a view and so on. And it's also perhaps the way it's presented as well, because if you think about, like, there is almost no color in a model-driven app. You've got your blue, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing that you do have color in is the Copilot thing. So your eye naturally goes to there because it's there and it's shiny and it's the only thing that's it's got a bit of a nice bubble to it and so on. So I think that is, I mean, we've seen that for quite some time now, the kind of relentless pushing of the AI kind of everywhere in everything and so on. I mean, there have been some interesting things in terms of being able to populate forms and it perhaps suggesting content. I actually think that's quite an interesting idea. How often, like, obviously when I'm coming at an app, I'm coming at it from a kind of designer's point of view, and therefore I'm not using the app 100 times a day, so therefore it's not always easy to know how useful that little thing is, or indeed how annoying it is. But yeah, we're definitely seen a lot of that. And when I came up with my point, it was about the teeny tiny box that you had for environment variables, when almost no environment variable is ever going to fit in the box and so on. And there's quite a lot of examples where we have white space where we don't need to have white space, where we're better off with actually being able to see the thing. Especially when you kind of have a panel that shifts out, but then sort of stops at like 1/3 across. It's like, well, I'm in the thing now. I mean, you might as well just make it bigger. But I guess they would have their reasons. But I suspect that it probably works on a mobile phone. But like, I don't think anyone's going to be designing their model-driven app on a mobile phone.
It is, it happens much less often, mostly for like, what is it called, field service workers.
Yeah. Okay, so we've rattled through this. Oh, and then there's the final one, which is really around giving you the opportunity to talk about maybe either what you're doing in Power Platform or things that you're proud that you've done, and by all means, do a 3, 2, 1. It's fine. Like, as in, like, the third place, you did this, and second, it's fine. Just whatever. This is your opportunity to kind of tell people a little bit about, what you've done that you're proud of.
Yeah. Number one has to be the architects community I built. The accelerator program, it's brought a lot of value for a lot of people. We have 88 people in our monthly program, and that doesn't count the like 299 who have come through it. Yeah. We have a cohort coming up in May, and that one's almost full. And that is with, you've never seen me really LinkedIn advertise for it at all in the last few months, because it's just kind of filling itself. So I'm very proud that it's brought a lot of value to people. I think what I'm most proudest of is how I've collaborated with other community people with it. And I'm very excited for things that we have coming up where it's certain leaders in our community are also getting like compensated and getting benefit and helping others. And we found a financial model that can help everybody. And that I'm really proud of. I think it's one of those, we think we want things for free, but we don't. I would rather pay money to have like guaranteed results and a super clear answer to my question and a super clean tutorial to get me to what I want versus a free thing that may or may not get me there. And I thought that way, and so do a lot of other people. And what I love about the tech community is there's enough money going around and people don't want to spend all their time in front of their computers. So they're like, I would rather pay if you can like get me to this other place. And that's been awesome to tap into that and then also move that money around. So it's not just our company that benefits, but everyone that helps us. So
And
that's my proudest achievement is like helping a bunch of people get jobs, get upskill,
yeah,
get comfortable. I love being tagged in their posts of when they solved a problem
yeah,
because of something they learned directly in our program. Like that's
yeah,
amazing. I don't think I have anything I'm like prouder of just even in my life.
yeah,
Other things that I'm proud of, I should probably say technical things that I've built. This one is really awesome. So we'll see when Copilot Studio gets there. I feel like I'm a bit ahead of it. I've built my own email automation tool where all the emails that come into our company, they automatically are pre-created based on the background of what our company does and what the person is asking about. And all we do is just click approve. So I have had to
mm,
write very, very few emails. I'm mostly, and not even me anymore, our operation lead does it. She's just click and approve on stuff. Like
yeah,
it's so much faster. It's burned hours away from the day. And it's just allowed us to focus on other things. We have some other really cool AI things happening, like being
mhm,
able to take a lot of participants taking their homework, analyzing the images of what they uploaded, and then just putting that in text to help us like grade them and see where they're kind
yeah,
of like messing things up. That's been really proud of. We got into a situation where we had some amazing staff, but one of them got hired by Coca-Cola. So we were gonna go find a replacement Power Apps developer, but then we're like, could we have AI kind of do some of their job?
yeah.
And so it kind of pushed us into this, and that's been awesome to work on.
Well, we got to mention AI again, didn't we?
It is cool when it's useful. I would say it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not something I have got into yet, and I guess time is our currency, isn't it? That's that one thing that doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are. Time is there's a finite amount of it, and I'm certainly enjoying doing this podcast, and I've invested time into. To be honest, it took a while to think about you know what it should be and who it's for and all those sorts of things. And to be fair, it probably has taken away from some of my learning journey. But at the same time, I get a different learning journey because I get to speak to people that I want to speak to. And so we're going to finish off with our the musical section. So you've got something for me. I've got something for you because I don't know if you know I do busking at the weekends.
Like you play music on the street?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
why your guitar isn't hanging on the wall? It's out in the street?
But no, it was also partly because when I thought about how's this going to work, I put the guitar up there. This thing is a brute, and I thought, well, do you know what? I'll just put it over there because I can then just reach over to it and pick it up. Whereas if I put it up there, then it's I'll be knocking over things. The Lego will go. Yeah, so that's my latest thing. Is on a Sunday morning, I'll get the guitar into the car, and I've got my gear and so on. I pop down to the town centre and I set up and I play my guitar, and
Can
it's
I ask, how much money do you make on that?
almost nothing, almost nothing.
You
And to be
gotta,
honest, when I gave some money to a homeless man, to be fair, there, there's quite a few people around like that. Actually, it's one of those things where the more you're in a place, the more you notice. But it is the most curious thing that I do of all. It's
sure.
you're looking at them, they're looking at you. You have all the thing where and then there's people that talk to you, and there are people that will, the sun's coming down, they'll sit down for a bit. And maybe they weren't going to sit down, but they do, and maybe they have a nice, moment in time. And then when you pack the guitar away at the end, the area just kind of goes silent again, and it's just an
That's
ordinary
beautiful.
area.
I don't do that, but I freestyle rap.
Oh,
Not
good.
on stage, but like in public, like settings with friends, like in the car. I haven't gone to an like open mic yet, but I've been tempted to. It's something I adore. By no means am I good at it, but I think that is awesome. I have never walked by a guy playing guitar on the street and thought, I bet he's really good at database integrations and accounting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really curious thing to do, and I think some of it is that idea of, I'm over 50 now, and that idea of when you are of a certain age, can you learn a new thing? Is that possible?
Yep.
Is it? And so I actually started learning the guitar in about 6 months ago, and but I had previously played the guitar. So, but when I was 17 years old, like I stopped when I was 16 or 17, and so it really surprised me how quickly it all came back, um, which, and for the guitar, it's reasonable. It is not quite like riding a bike, but actually the way you grip a guitar is something you have to learn. Strength is a slight difference, but yeah, I think that whole idea of, and maybe it applies to the Power Platform as well, in the sense of, okay, Rory's learnt this thing here, wonderful, but can you? I don't know, if you're 40 years old or 45 or 50, can you learn Power Platform? Well,
Sure.
you'll probably be able to learn some of it, and from my point of view, I'm an ex accountant that now builds things using Power Platform. Will I ever be a pro dev version of Rory? Well, no, there won't be. But I just have to be happy with where I am and what I can achieve and so on. Because the minute you think about all the things that you can't do, that's not a good place to be, because there are a million things you could do in the world, and there's probably a good many hundreds of thousands of them that you can't do for lots of reasons. So perhaps focus on the things that you can do, rather than the things that you.
Yeah. I like how this turned into like a motivational speech.
I wasn't sure where I was going with that, but anyway. So now you sent me the music that you were going to do, and I've been bopping along to it. I'm not gonna. I've been bopping along to it over the weekend, which has been really cool. Actually, I love the idea that people tell you about a song. And so, do you want to introduce this song and like the why? This is your Desert Island Disc. Why do you want to tell people? Why would you want to bring this with you?
The song is called Apete. It means apartment in Korean. It's by the Korean pop artist Rose, collaborating with Bruno Mars. She thought of the concept and he kind of helped do the music along with his team. I bring up this song because I went to my first Power Platform conference, the one in Vancouver, and I'm at this speakers party, and I see Matt Devaney for the first time. I've never seen him in real life, and I was like, oh my god, it's that guy. And I was kind of standing next to him, I was like, well, I have to introduce myself. And I'm like a little nervous, but I don't want to seem that way, because it's like, you don't want to be a loser who's starstruck. And then as I'm trying to find the way that I'm going to talk to him, Lisa Crosby also comes nearby. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. So it's two superstars that are next to me. And then Scott Durrow's in the corner taking requests as the DJ. As I say this story out loud, this sounds like a dream I had. I'm like, the Ribbon Workbench guy was doing the 8-track. And so he's taking requests, so I request...
Was Satya Nadella breakdancing?
Yeah, exactly. So I requested Apete because I just adore that song. And then it was playing as I started talking to Matt. And my opener to him was like, I didn't even say my name or say nice to meet you, I love your blog. I was just like, I picked this song. And he listened and he's like, is this Apete? I was like, yeah. He's like, my daughters love this song. And he said it in a way where I could tell he actually means he loves the song, even though I don't know if he admitted it. So then, him and I go, we haven't even had a conversation yet. Him and I go lyric for lyric, singing the song, kind of doing little dances by ourselves in the corner of this happy hour, which is not conducive to dance. And then Lisa Crosby comes over and says, is this Apete? My daughters love this song. And then she's into it. So this is kind of how I meet the three of them, is us having a little cipher and kind of dancing around. And at the end, I was like, oh, I'm Sean, I love your blog, good stuff. And Bo, your videos are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and both of them are amazing. I definitely want to get Matt onto onto this podcast. I have reached out to him once, but I didn't get past his first line of defence. He's probably got some AI bot that that noped me. Yeah. So and I'm definitely gonna. I've talked to Lisa about coming on as well, and she's a lot of fun. And I reckon I actually already know her Desert Island Disc.
Okay.
I reckon I know it already. So, but I'm not going to say it because that wouldn't be fair. Now, last time in the last episode with Ulrika, she told me about her her song, which was "Children" by Robert Miles,
Okay.
and it's really cool. It goes anyway. It's kind of synth music, and it's really cool. And so I did a thing where I did this overlay of the music on top of, as she was talking about how she was, how it was the music for her life and so on. And so I kind of overlaid the music. It was lovely. It all came in. It was beautiful and so on. And then I got a copyright strike.
Of course.
That I had done that. But not only did I get a copyright strike, on the actual YouTube video, the music is not there.
Right.
It is not there. She carries
Rookie
on
mistake,
talking.
Rory. You got to put that in a YouTube short.
So I don't know what happened there. So what that means is where I'm going with this is I'm going to do a kind of slightly not very practiced version of just the chorus bit. Actually, I'm only going to do the pre-chorus bit. Yeah, okay. So because our listeners won't know what this song is, and they may want their young children to learn this song that you happen to like.
Let's hear it.
Can you hear my dog, by the way?
I can.
He's going mad.
Because he loves the song.
Yeah, well, it's just the anticipation of the song at this time.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to... I probably don't know half the chords. Oh, yeah, I'm just going to do the chorus bit, pre-chorus bit. Don't you want me like I want you, baby? Don't you need me like I need you now? Sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy. All you gotta do is just meet me at the... That's it.
That was beautiful. That was so
Anyway.
like Bob Dylan does appetite, but I dig it.
Well, I should have gone higher actually, but I missed the note because it is much higher. Cool. So and then I thought I would just give people. This is the song that I'm working on at the moment, and so what I'm going to do is first of all thank you so much for coming on to the show today. I do love all the work that you do. I love the videos you do, and it really is cool the accelerator program that you have put together, because it is more than just it's more than the sum of its parts. I think, in particular, how people connect with each other and how you run the sessions and so on. So we will get links to that, and I'll get the link from you for that. And so what I thought I would do is I'm really trying to kind of make this all part of this journey that Rory's on with doing his different songs and so on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of finish off the podcast by just playing this out. And so what's going to happen is I'll play out, and then I'll do a little fade out as the podcast ends, and then we off into our sunset. And so I don't know if you might not know this song, but it's called "Falling Slowly" by
The Once movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd do that. I don't know you, but I want you all the more for that.